Welcome to Wisdom of the Bible channel. Nostradamus' centuries-old prediction offers remarkable insight into who the true Israelites might be. Across generations, many have been enthralled by the enigmatic verses of Michel de Nostradamus, known widely as Nostradamus. His writings, cloaked in riddles, have fueled endless discussions, speculation, and curiosity. But suppose one of his most stunning revelations has been right before our eyes all along. Suppose his writings from nearly 5 centuries ago actually unlock the secret to identifying the true Israelites, those whose identity has been systematically erased, their story hidden beneath countless falsehoods. In a society saturated with deceit, the moment has finally arrived for the truth to emerge. Nostradamus predicted a period when a forgotten group would reclaim what was taken from them. Could his cryptic lines refer to the Black Israelites? The lineage of those subjected to the anguish of the transatlantic slave trade, stripped of their heritage and removed from recorded history? The indicators are compelling. Let us delve into the clear message woven into Nostradamus' language. One overlooked yet critical disclosure is embedded in his prophecies, relating to scattered people who, in the end, would reclaim a holy birthright. Could this be linked to biblical forecasts about the lost tribes of Israel? Specifically, did Nostradamus hint at the Black Israelites, whose genuine roots have been repressed for so many years? A striking piece of evidence surfaces in Century 1, Quatrain 40, where Nostradamus states, "A people driven from their land, cast into suffering, scattered like dust by the 4 winds, their cries shall echo in the void, but in the final days their name shall be known." On the surface, this may represent a tormented and displaced population. However, in light of biblical prophecy, its significance intensifies. Scripture frequently describes the Israelites as a nation that, due to disobedience, was dispersed worldwide. Deuteronomy 28:64 proclaims, "Then the Lord will scatter you among all nations, from one end of the earth to the other. There you will worship other gods, gods of wood and stone, which neither you nor your ancestors have known." The Israelites were foretold to experience exile and alienation, forced into unfamiliar lands and deprived of their identity. Nostradamus' quatrain echoes this biblical pronouncement, referencing a people scattered like dust by the 4 winds. The line, "Their cries shall echo in the void," could symbolize centuries of pleas for deliverance that went mostly unheeded. And, "In the final days their name shall be known," indicates that, after being overlooked and mislabeled for so long, they would finally rediscover who they are. Who might this group be? Did Nostradamus foresee the Black Israelites, direct heirs of the original Israelites, those stolen from their homeland, sold into bondage, and made to assimilate foreign customs? The similarities between Nostradamus' illusions and the biblical narrative of the lost tribes are striking. Deuteronomy 28:68 describes another somber prophecy about the fate of the Israelites. "The Lord will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey I said you should never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you." Many researchers and theologians relate this passage to the forced transport of Africans across the Atlantic. People were taken in cramped vessels to remote territories, sold into servitude, and coerced into relinquishing their cultures, dialects, and beliefs. They were relabeled, handed new identities, and instructed to worship the deities of those who had enslaved them. This perfectly aligns with Deuteronomy's warning. Nostradamus' depiction of a widely exiled population destined to eventually recover their heritage parallels these experiences. Furthermore, Nostradamus' verses frequently include astral signs and the concept of a grand enlightenment. Several biblical writings, such as Isaiah 11:11-12, also reference a future regathering of the scattered children of Israel. In that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the 4 quarters of the earth. Could Nostradamus have witnessed a glimpse of this remarkable resurgence? His writings imply that, in the last epoch, a long-forgotten people would grasp their genuine lineage. This aligns with current debates on the identity of Black communities in the Western Hemisphere and a possible link to the Israelites of the Bible. Though some have dismissed Nostradamus's predictions as overly broad and open to flexible interpretation, a closer reading rooted in biblical prophecy and global history makes for compelling parallels. The Bible repeatedly warns that Israel would lose its sense of identity due to exile and oppression. Likewise, many in the African diaspora underwent forced displacement and lost their historical roots. Nostradamus's phrase, "scattered like dust," could allude to that vast dispersal. A people sold into slavery. The horrific transatlantic slave trade aligns closely with Deuteronomy 28:68, where the Israelites are said to return on ships into bondage. Nostradamus references a group cast into suffering, reinforcing these themes. A future awakening. Biblical prophecy states that, in the final era, Israel's true descendants would finally awaken to their authentic background. Nostradamus addresses this when he proclaims, "But in the final days, their name shall be known." This might suggest the growing consciousness among Black communities of a potential Hebrew ancestry. If, in fact, Nostradamus predicted the obscured story of the Black Israelites, his poems could act as a strong corroboration of what Scripture has long indicated. This discovery may hold significant implications for how Black populations worldwide come to recognize their spiritual, cultural, and historical identities. Traditional historical frameworks have disregarded or underplayed the theory that Israelites traveled deeper into Africa and were later ensnared in slavery. Nevertheless, biblical foretellings and Nostradamus's messages hint at an alternative perspective. As individuals investigate their family histories, the combined significance of biblical and Nostradamian prophecies grows. Maybe Nostradamus wasn't just a poet or astrologer. He could have peered into a coming revelation, one destined to disrupt prevailing accounts and provoke a re-evaluation of the question, who are the genuine Israelites? If his quatrains point to the Black Israelites, he becomes yet another voice confirming a truth now re-emerging. So, was he cautioning society about an obscured legacy only starting to surface? Who did Nostradamus truly mean when he discussed the identity of the real Israelites? For generations, Nostradamus's predictions have intrigued the world. Hidden within his verses about struggles, epidemics, and upheaval is a darker warning, describing how an entire people had their heritage stolen and supplanted by fabricated stories. Could Nostradamus have foreseen not just the establishment of massive empires, but the orchestrated campaign to hide the rightful identity of biblical Israel? Was he hinting that his words pertain to African-descended populations, notably those in the Americas, who have been parted from their ancestry for countless years? One relevant quatrain surfaces in Century 9, Quatrain 67. A great empire shall rise, built upon deceit. The victors shall craft history in their image. The rightful heirs cast into obscurity, until the day their voices awaken the world. On a casual reading, this may reflect the usual shifts of power where conquerors glorify themselves. Yet a deeper investigation suggests a far bigger revelation. Rightful heirs cast into obscurity alludes to a group intended to inherit something extraordinary, but was systematically erased. Many argue this scenario describes what took place with the biblical Israelites. African Americans, for example, were taught that their origin begins with slavery, that their forebears came from Africa, were coerced into labor, and thus severed from their cultural lineage. Yet what if that story, while acknowledging real pain, is only part of the truth? What if a grand scheme systematically replaced their legitimate heritage with a false narrative? The transatlantic slave trade marks one of the biggest involuntary migrations in history. Millions of Africans were abducted, sold, and scattered, chiefly in the Americas. But unlike other migrant communities who held onto aspects of their culture, enslaved Africans were methodically stripped of theirs. Languages were outlawed, original names removed, and belief systems swapped for those of their oppressors. This was no random process. It was a calculated form of historical and cultural annihilation. This resonates alarmingly with Nostradamus's phrase, "The victors shall craft history in their image," hinting at how colonial powers rewrote the past to rationalize their subjugation. By labeling Black people as inferior and without notable heritage, they broke any ties to a Hebrew ancestry that might have existed. Hence, individuals forcibly shipped overseas, those enduring lifetimes of servitude, discrimination, and targeted injustices may well be the descendants spoken of in the scriptures, namely the Israelites to be scattered among the nations. Deuteronomy 28:64. Nostradamus's addition, "until the day their voices awaken the world," suggests these descendants would eventually uncover their real story. This recognition is indeed unfolding today. Communities across the African diaspora are reawakening to the idea that they are part of an ancient lineage, intentionally masked over time. What is fascinating about Nostradamus is that his verses often signify repeating patterns rather than singular events. If he was cryptically referring to a forgotten people eventually rediscovering themselves, it points to our present age. The 20th and 21st centuries have seen a surge of inquiries that question Eurocentric versions of history. New research, documentaries, and individual efforts reveal that the transatlantic slave trade not only devastated African cultures, but also broke an Israelite link. A growing number of African Americans now study the Bible more closely, rethinking established assumptions and identifying similarities between their collective past and Israel's scriptural narrative. Deuteronomy 28, with its catalog of hardships and exile, aligns astonishingly well with the story of the African diaspora. Nostradamus's remarks seem to echo this history, referring to a people whose lineage was taken from them, yet who would ultimately rediscover the truth. Modern genetic tests underscore this discussion further, finding markers among some in the African American community that connect to ancient Hebrew lineages. Although this field of study is new, it offers more support to the proposition that the Israelite saga is more intricate than conventional opinions have long portrayed. Should Nostradamus have correctly foreseen that these dispossessed heirs would reawaken, then humanity may be at the edge of a major historical and spiritual turning point. As awareness of these connections grows, the outcomes are profound. This suggests that established global narratives have been skewed for centuries, and the original Israelites' identity was never truly lost, but hidden in everyday view. Such a revelation could drastically alter the sense of identity for countless people, reframing not only religion but also academic and political institutions founded on purposeful misrepresentation. If Black Israelites represent the group Nostradamus wrote about, then we might be witnessing prophecy fulfilled, a powerful correction to a lost truth. The critical question, however, is whether, as these voices grow louder, the course of history will finally incorporate these facts. Nostradamus again raises the question of the authentic Israelites. Who are they? For ages, his cryptic words have astonished those seeking deeper meaning. Yet his ominous statements discuss more than wars or upheavals. They highlight a purposeful removal of a people's ancestral record, substituted with fictitious accounts. Could Nostradamus have predicted both the expansion of world powers and the comprehensive obliteration of the original Israelite identity? If so, precisely which group was he referencing? Could he have meant people in the African diaspora, particularly Black Americans, who remain oblivious to their genealogical lineage? Among his many cryptic poems, Century 9, Quatrain 67 stands out. A great empire shall rise, built upon deceit. The victors shall craft history in their image. The rightful heirs cast into obscurity, until the day their voices awaken the world. Initially, this may seem like a basic depiction of how conquerors often chronicle their achievements. Still, on a deeper level, it speaks of rightful heirs driven into oblivion, suggesting a significant legacy stolen from them. This description resonates with the claim that the original Israelites had their heritage erased. Entire generations of Black Americans, for example, were told their collective story began with enslavement, as if they had no meaningful past outside of that trauma. The transatlantic slave trade is an immense forced exodus, one that saw countless Africans kidnapped, sold, and relocated to the Americas. But these men and women did not just lose their homes, they were stripped of names and beliefs. Their entire historical record was systematically destroyed. Such carefully orchestrated actions mirror the chilling lines by Nostradamus. The victors shall craft history in their image. Indeed, colonial regimes recast the past, painting Africans as lacking any substantial achievements, thus detaching them from a biblical ancestry. The meaning is clear. Those who endured forced labor, racial discrimination, and centuries of abuse may, in fact, be the very community named in Scripture, Israelites dispersed to all nations. Deuteronomy 28:64. Nostradamus's conclusion, "Until the day their voices awaken the world," indicates an eventual realization of identity. This awakening is undeniably happening. There is an ever-growing interest among African Americans and other people of African descent who see themselves not simply as descendants of slaves, but as part of a more profound, divinely bound lineage. Nostradamus's prophecies frequently outline repeating cycles rather than isolated incidents, so if he envisioned a forgotten nation reclaiming its name, it may well describe current times. In recent years, a rise in scholarship and research challenges long-standing Eurocentric histories. Documentaries, books, and grassroots inquiries expose how the slave trade tore away not only African cultural elements, but also potential Israelite roots. A significant portion of Black Americans now scrutinizes biblical passages, searching for resonances between the plight of the Israelites and the oppression their ancestors faced. Passages like Deuteronomy 28, detailing an oppressed and exiled people, align closely with the broader African diaspora. Nostradamus, meanwhile, referred to a group whose true story was erased, but who would eventually find it again. Furthermore, newer genetic research reveals that numerous African Americans carry markers associated with ancient Hebrew lines. Though there is much to explore, this further bolsters the premise that the Israelites' tale cannot be neatly confined to a single group or landmass. If Nostradamus's words about the hidden rightful heirs waking up are accurate, we stand at the threshold of an unparalleled shift in both history and spirituality. As these connections come into view, their reverberations are immense. Recognizing this possibility implies that the mainstream historical account has been manipulated all along, hiding the original Israelites in plain sight. This insight has the potential to reshape identity, alter theological dialogues, and unsettle established power systems that rely on misconceptions. If those now identified as Black Israelites do descend from those prophesied in Scripture and Nostradamus's works, we might be watching an age-old promise fulfilled. Yet the paramount question endures. As these lost voices rise, will the official record at last reflect the genuine past? Nostradamus also alluded to a great awakening in his prophecies. He spoke of a point in history when truths, long repressed, would emerge, rattling the bedrock of accepted narratives. Some believe this is now unfolding. Specifically, did Nostradamus predict the worldwide awakening among Black Americans, many of whom have been separated from their origins, now reclaiming their rightful status as biblical Israelites? In Century 5, Quatrain 92, he writes, "The truth long buried shall rise again. Hidden hands will tremble in fear, for the ones they sought to erase shall reclaim what was always theirs." These words evoke an image of purposeful concealment by those in control, whom Nostradamus calls hidden hands. Still, he doesn't imply their suppression would be indefinite. Rather, he envisioned that those erased from records would resurface, reclaiming what rightfully belonged to them. This resonates with the ongoing debate around identifying the genuine descendants of Israel. In popular belief, Black Americans are simply the progeny of West or Central African groups, forcibly taken. But new academic work, archaeology, and genetic testing are challenging that assumption. Some scholars say a large segment of the African diaspora, particularly those uprooted by the Atlantic slave trade, might actually be directly connected to the ancient Israelites. If widely confirmed, this suggests that history was purposefully tailored, not to uphold the truth but to erase it. Nostradamus's texts imply that those orchestrating this deception will eventually face the repercussions of their actions. The consequences could be monumental. If Black Americans today are truly part of the Israelite family line, then whole centuries of sermons, societal constructs, and official histories rest on misleading premises. At present, Black Americans lead this surge in recognizing what might have been lost. Whereas people once regarded this as a fringe idea, it has become a broader conversation, backed by thorough research and a relentless pursuit of historical accuracy. The creation of new works and the uncovering of hidden narratives reflect this revival. Experts have begun re-evaluating data on ancient movements of people, prophetic biblical writings, and primary documents, all pointing to the possibility that a significant portion of Africans brought to the Americas had Israelite ancestry. Furthermore, spiritual beliefs have a role in this reawakening. Many in the Black community now scrutinize Scripture with renewed interest, finding strong echoes between their own hardships and the tribulations the ancient Israelites endured. Chapters like Deuteronomy 28, which outline the adversities destined for the Israelites, mirror the experiences of many Africans under slavery, displacement, and racial prejudice. Nostradamus's quatrains, read in this way, add weight to that alignment. His verses tell of a people rediscovering a lost heritage, exposing deceptions that have persisted for ages, and transforming the historical narrative. If this indeed is what Nostradamus foresaw, then these revelations are taking place in our lifetime. If his prophecies are accurate, then anyone revealing these truths will likely meet intense pushback. He hinted that the forces responsible for forging false history would not surrender without a fight. They would resort to confusion, active suppression, or even penalizing anyone who tries to bring these truths to the public. This is apparent now, as numerous academics and community leaders discussing Black Israelite heritage are ridiculed and shut out of conventional forums. Their results are branded as conspiratorial, their arguments minimized, and their voices marginalized. Nostradamus envisioned a dangerous environment for truth seekers, one where rewriting history demands confronting well-entrenched power structures. Yet he also offered an optimistic sign. He foresaw that those who strive for truth would triumph. His quatrains foretell the moment when the sheer bulk of evidence and the collective will of informed individuals can no longer be silenced. Observing the increase in dialogues about the real identity of Black Americans and their link to the Israelites makes it difficult to overlook parallels with Nostradamus's words. Recent initiatives to unveil lost history, heightened calls for factual accuracy, and a growing understanding of long-buried data fit closely with his vision of a time when deceit must be confronted. If his foresight is now coming to pass, we stand at a critical moment in our story. The repercussions stretch beyond religion. They involve identity, social structures, governance, and our entire view of the past. If Black Americans and others in the diaspora represent the genuine Israelites, we may be on the edge of a seismic shift, one that could redefine recorded history and restore it. The question is whether the emerging truth will be embraced or buried again, under resistance from those who benefit from the established narrative. Nostradamus also alluded to a concluding revelation, indicating that the genuine Hebrews would one day reclaim their birthright. History has seen empires crumble, kingdoms flourish and vanish, and facts retooled to favor those controlling the narrative. Yet Nostradamus, renowned for his cryptic yet compelling predictions, wrote of a definitive juncture when a long-scattered population would stand up, recover what was stolen, and steer humanity down a new path. In his later writings, Nostradamus proposed that these forgotten heirs, robbed and dislodged, would ultimately remember their lineage and seize the authority intended for them. Century 10, Quatrain 75 reads, "The veil of deception shall be torn asunder, and those deemed lowly shall be lifted high. The children of the covenant shall rise again, and the world shall tremble at their return." This resonates with biblical sources that describe the reunification of Israel's lost branches. Ezekiel 37:21-22 says, "I will take the Israelites out of the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from all around and bring them back into their own land. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel." Debates have raged over the identity of the authentic Israelites, with some assigning it to specific groups in certain regions. However, it is increasingly believed that substantial numbers of those torn from Africa and sold into slavery were in fact the biblical Hebrews. Nostradamus's forecast implies that these people, erased from common memory, would eventually awaken to who they are. We are now witnessing exactly that on a large scale. Throughout the Americas and beyond, individuals with African ancestry are challenging the narratives handed down to them, re-examining ancient texts, tracing genetic roots, and reviving suppressed spiritual bonds. This awakening transcends academic discourse, prompting a reassessment of long-held notions about history, ancestry, and religious identity. Nostradamus anticipated more than a mere historical realignment. He envisioned an upheaval in spirituality. The restoration of the lost tribes to their original standing was never going to be a subtle development, but something to jolt the core of global systems. Century 6, Quatrain 80 says, "The rulers shall falter in their deceit as the forgotten ones reclaim the throne, a world turned upside down, when the meek inherit the earth. This lines up with biblical teachings like Matthew 5:5, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Over the centuries, the world order has been built on intentional distortions. Colonial powers, manipulated religion, and all-out erasure of cultures formed the bedrock of modern civilization. But Nostradamus stated these lies wouldn't last forever. As the lost Hebrews return to truth, they overturn narratives that have endured for ages, advocating for justice and accuracy. This process is visible right now. The re-emergence of Black Israelite identity stands for more than just a correction in history. It symbolizes a renewal of the spirit. The Bible prophesies that the Israelites, penalized for their disobedience and scattered, would recollect their origins in the last days. Jeremiah 33 underscores this promise. Nostradamus' verses mirror that theme. He describes an upheaval where those once scorned ascend to a place of authority. Such a notion challenges social orders that rely on falsified history to cling to power. Just the possibility that African-descended groups could be the genuine Israelites topples enduring religious and historical beliefs, causing a widespread reassessment. According to Nostradamus, the unveiling of this fact would surpass typical historical rectifications. It would signify a divine judgment of sorts. Our world has been sculpted by narratives that benefit only a few. Imperial conquest, forced labor, economic exploitation, and religious revisions all contributed to dismantling the original identity of the Israelites. Yet Nostradamus suggested that once this core truth surfaced, life would change dramatically. Falsehoods shall crumble like the walls of Jericho, as the long-lost rise in might. The world shall reckon with its lies, and justice shall balance the scales. Enoch, Century 7, Quatrain 43. This poignant reference alludes to the biblical story of Jericho's downfall, Joshua 6:1-27, implying that in a similar sweeping fashion, the entrenched systems of untruth and suppression will disintegrate, revealing what was hidden beneath. Should global society accept who the Israelites actually are, it will unavoidably spark a fundamental realignment. School curricula, theological interpretations, and national acknowledgments of past wrongdoings would have to be reevaluated. Even our view of who constitutes God's chosen people would shift, pivoting away from exclusivism toward a scenario of restitution and divine fairness. If Nostradamus' forecasts ring true, we could be living in the very era he forewarned. The rise of Black Israelite consciousness extends beyond mere identification, aiming to reclaim spiritual leadership, challenge entrenched histories, and usher in a transformative wave of truth. As this movement gains ground, institutions long reliant on the cover-up of facts will face scrutiny. Yet we must ask ourselves, are we ready for the future Nostradamus envisioned? If his writings hold any accuracy, then we are witnessing the birth of an extraordinary transformation, bringing equity and the revival of timeless promises. A reawakened Israel, in its rightful form, will irrevocably alter our world. Finally, Nostradamus' revelations, seen in tandem with biblical prophecies and historical clues, present a resounding message. The Black Israelites appear to be the true successors of the lost tribes, forcibly robbed of their memory, yet now stepping forward to reclaim what was theirs. The prophecies are unfolding, and this truth can no longer remain in the shadows. Nostradamus anticipated this day, and it has arrived. The rightful Israelites are re-embracing their calling, and the course of human events will never revert to how it was.
Hello, dear viewers. Thank you for watching our channel, Wisdom of the Bible. I personally invite you to subscribe to our channel. It supports us and helps us create more videos. Thank you, and God bless you.